Okay, so one of Burke's major contributions is the idea of identification. So we want to understand identification as multifaceted. It's partly identity, so who am I, Nicole Fianan Steele, but also who am I with my roles. So I'm a mother, I'm a college professor, I'm an associate professor, which carries meaning in certain areas. I am the graduate coordinator of our MA and MED in English, which carries certain, I study digital rhetoric, I'm published in digital rhetoric, I publish open educational resources. Like each of these are identifications within larger groups. And two specific groups, depending on who's connecting to them, they carry different values, they carry different ways of understanding, different ways of making meaning. And that's the identification that Burke's talking about. Identities, but also roles within organizations, and the way that organizations influence the roles, and the way that individuals within the roles influence the overall representation. So this is really helpful to understand and to think about with representation. Okay, so let's stick with the professor thing because it's me, right? And you get all these fun videos from me. If you went right now and you Googled college professors, you would most likely, it's gotten a little bit better, but not great, most likely you're going to get on the images a lot of images of middle-aged and late middle-aged white males in sports coats, with the little patches on the elbows. No part of this looks like what Google thinks a college professor should look like. So that's where we get to representation, and how representation then forms what our expectations are for identities and identifications within groups. We literally start to, and this is where we get to, so there are layers of all of this, we start to self-persuade and self-understand. Am I understanding the situation or the group or the narrative or the story or the discipline? Am I understanding it in the right way by comparing what I think should be that role, representation, and what that role actually looks like? So that comparison is a part of identification, and it's a part of this self-persuasion element of rhetoric that Burke is really building so much of his theories on. How do these larger social structures create the need for rhetoric, and how does rhetoric filter into the actual ability to create these larger social structures? And then once the larger social structures are in place, they're communicating and they're moving on their own. Rhetorically, they're persuading us of understanding the world in specific ways. So going back to the college professors, if all we see, or what seems to be portrayed, and there's a new movie coming out. My brother's a massive fan of Nicolas Cage, like epic fan of Nicolas Cage, and there's a movie coming out and Nicolas Cage is playing a middle-aged college professor. I'm like, of course he is. And I've already seen a picture for it. They have him in a bald cap, so he's balding, he's wearing a sports jacket, and he's late middle-aged. And like, that representation of college professors then makes me have to persuade you more to take me seriously as a college professor. Like, I have to up how I talk, or how I use these videos, or how I represent my knowledge, because that representation is so common that we just believe that's what a college professor should look like, not this. And so those are, we can call them stereotypes, we can call them a lot of different things, but these representations are a really important part of the identification theory that Burke is building, because then we create reality, and reality shapes the individual identifications, and they form ways that we have expectations for what we know and what we should know and how we know. And those ways of thinking then inform how we interact and how we persuade and how we practice rhetoric, and how rhetoric impacts and practices itself on us. That's identification. It's got to be a two-way street, but representation is always a part of it, which comes along with values. What values do we hold, and how do we understand those? Meaning making, how is our meaning making created by the situation, and why? We have to think about it from all different directions, okay? It's dense, but if you have questions, let me know.